Welcome, everyone. Hi, Jivana. Welcome.
Hi, Shannon. It's so good to see you. Yay.
Yay. I'm so glad that we get to chat today. Welcome, everyone. This is our live version of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. If you're here for the replay, hello. If you're here live, say hello in the comments and tell us how your day is going. Also, if you comment on our YouTube channel, then you are entered in the draw to win a ticket to the Accessible Yoga Conference. So we've got 2 tickets to give away. Jivana, before we dive in, tell us about the Accessible Yoga Conference.
Okay. And I have lots of questions for you today, too.
Okay.
You don't
I
get
don't know if you
interviewed
got
enough.
the memo, but I'm doing the interview. What's happening?
I know, but I think everyone really wants to know about you. Don't you? I mean, doesn't everyone there need to know more about Shannon? I don't know if you get interviewed enough, honestly. Anyway, yes, thanks for giving away tickets. We're so excited about the conference. This is our 2nd year online. We used to do it in person. And I met you actually in Toronto way back when, a couple years ago. We used to move around all over the world, and then COVID happened and we moved online. But it's been kind of amazing because we have presenters from all over the world, attendees from all over the world. It's in a way more accessible for people. We have tiered pricing and scholarships available, so it's financially accessible as well. And there are about 50 presenters who are incredibly diverse, and many people maybe you've never heard of, who we've done a lot of research to find. People who are doing amazing work, and we wanted to share their stories and their wisdom, and it's very exciting. So we have some more well-known presenters. We have keynote speakers like Tracy Stanley, Jacoby Ballard, Indu Aurora, Reggie Hubbard, Colin Liu. We have a pre-conference intensive on October 14th. That's a free event on race and equity in yoga. That's an amazing thing. So I could go on. I don't want to take all our time, but it's an exciting program.
I am really excited about it. In that first one that I went to in Toronto, I have to say, I just felt so welcome and taken care of in that conference. So I don't know what the magic is there it just felt like so many details were taken care of, and I've never experienced that. So I hope everyone, I hope everyone comments on our YouTube live. It'll be easier on the YouTube than if you're in Facebook, it'll be easier. Yay, we already have some people saying hello. It's Jessica in sunny Baltimore and having a great day. Karina's here saying hi, Shannon and Jivana. And Meet Me on My Mat says hello from Bristow, Virginia. Hi. Looking forward to the conference. Yay!
Yay.
Also, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Offering Tree. And if you use the code offeringtree.com/Shannon, you can get a discount. And some big news about Offering Tree. They just released their page builder. So I know a lot of you have been waiting for this and saying, when can I customize my website more? And it's here. So thank you to Offering Tree. All right, let's dig in. If you are here live and you have questions, make sure to pop them here in the comments as we go. But Jivana, what's it been like to write your 2nd book?
It was a journey, I think because of COVID and I wasn't traveling, I had a chance just to be home, and I had more time. And that helped me finish that book, because it's something I've been working on for many years, but it's a big project. It's really a lot of things I've been writing about and thinking about for forever, like really for my whole life, but kind of all compiled into that one book. My first book was really more focused on adapting asana and a little bit about the story of accessible yoga. This one is more into looking at how we can engage with the practice today, and really just wanting to share my perspective on it. I'm not trying to be like an authority. I just want to share what I found on my journey, and how I see the yoga practices integrating with my interest in social justice and in service and caring about other people. And I feel like that's the heart of the teachings, and that we don't talk about it enough. So I think that's what really motivated me, especially when I started writing right during Black Lives Matter, and when that all happened here in the US, and then also through COVID. So and that just brought back so much for me from my years as an AIDS activist in the 80s and 90s. So really, I've always really found those connections between yoga and social justice, and I wanted to share them.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you did. I had this moment this week where I was getting pretty wound up about something, as you know I can do. Sometimes I just leave you random voice messages. Pretty.
I love them. I love your messages. I do.
And I just found it to be really grounding to read your book. And I love the stories that you've weaved in as well. Something that really has been on my mind, and we've been talking about it on the podcast. We talked about it live with Wolf Terry, is ahimsa. And so I still think there are yoga teachers that I hear from, and also my 16-year-old daughter and other people who are like, wait a second, what does yoga have to do with social justice and activism? And what about ahimsa? How does that all play in? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love to hear what your daughter thinks, but because we both have 16-year-old daughters, so that always makes it for interesting conversation.
Well, she basically was like, no, that's not yoga. Yoga is like you go and you relax and you stretch and you breathe. And I was like, smiling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of people think. And that is part of yoga. I mean, that's the practice. There's the physical part, which is so beautiful and important. But I guess that's what I was trying to get at in the book, is just the idea of like, what do you do with all of that energy that you find in yoga? What do you do with that peace of mind? Is that the goal? Like, is the goal just to find something for yourself, or is there a kind of a bigger purpose? And I don't think social justice is the goal. I'm not saying that. It's like I'm just saying that for me, that's my personal practice. And I think a lot of what the teachings are about are learning how to kind of handle our own ego. I mean, if you look at in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the obstacles that Patanjali offers, like the main obstacles to our practice the main one is ignorance of our spiritual nature. And then the next one is egoism and the idea that we are separate, right? And so like, in a way, Patanjali is saying that's why we are not enlightened, right? Is because we think we're individuals and we're not connected to each other and to everything in creation. And I feel like, to me, social justice is like wanting justice for others, actually just having compassion for others and caring about other people other than myself. To me, that's directly aligned with the yoga teaching. And ahimsa is a perfect example of that. Like, ahimsa is about non-harm, but in a way, if you think about what does it mean not to harm somebody? And you could say, well, not harming someone is actually caring for them, or trying to loving them, like actively. Like, ahimsa in an active form is love. And one of my teachers, Nischala Devi, who people might know, she wrote a translation of the Yoga Sutras called The Secret Power of Yoga. And it's a great version. And she does that. That's her translation of ahimsa is love. And I think it's such a beautiful idea that it's about cultivating care for others. And in a way, as part of our practice, right? As part of a practice of overcoming our ego's limitations. And I feel like we have the ego tends to have a very, what's the word, like myopic view of the world. Like, we see things in a small way. Like, we get, and I do that too. Like, I get very obsessed with people criticizing me or disagreeing with me, or, when I feel hurt or injured. And yoga is like helping me to see beyond that, see beyond my ego's kind of selfish needs, and finding a way to put that the energy that I have in my life in service of others, like to make a positive impact on the world. I think we all want that, don't we?
Yeah. And I love that question that you opened with, like, what is the goal here? Is the goal just, you get to stretch and breathe and feel relaxed and you feel better? Or what is the ultimate goal? I would love to ask anyone who's listening live or in the comments, what do you think the ultimate goal for you is with your own practice? Like,
what is it for you? Yeah.
Well, for me, I know that when I started practicing yoga, I was like, "Oh, I have, like, more patience with my children, and I
Mm.
feel more at home in my body," which I didn't feel that after I had my babies. Like, I really felt like my body belonged to these these humans running around. I really did. Like, my sleep
Uh,
belonged to them, my,
yeah,
breastfeeding, I'm like, my literally, my body felt like it's just
yeah,
here to serve children, and when I started doing yoga, I was like,
yeah.
"Oh, I feel more at home in myself," and then I realized this really makes an impact in the relationships and the connections I have with people. Um, yeah. You talked about
Can I just echo
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
I raised two kids, and my kid, I think I'm lucky because as a man, I think most men don't get that primary caregiver, role, which I had. We adopted our kids at birth, and I was a stay-at-home dad, and so I had that. I wasn't breastfeeding, so I don't know about that part. But other than that, I got it. Like I felt like, yeah, they were just they it was everything. Like everything was about them as babies and as toddlers, and even today, like they're just so primary in my mind. And I think that experience is actually what really taught me about yoga, to be honest, like about service, about love. Like those teachings are very intellectual in the yoga tradition, but I think to parent and to have the experience of having to like put your egotistical needs and your selfish needs aside, even though it's not good in the long run. I mean, I think we need to take care of ourselves. It still was such an amazing lesson for me and my ego. So I love that. I love that you shared that. See, I got to ask you a question. I got to ask you more questions.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that you said that you really learned a lot, and I love how you also wrote about parenting in the book. That was one of the
Yeah,
chapters where I was like, "Shoot, I have to come back to this." I kinda skipped
yeah,
around in the book because honestly, there was some stuff there where I thought, "Okay, I need to read this again." Like, there were some like that, and then there were other ones where I got so wrapped up into the stories that you were telling, I was like, "Shannon, you're supposed to be doing research and making notes," and I had totally forgotten, and I was
that's good.
reading. So,
Yeah.
it was really good that way. There was something that you had said in talking about, so here's a big question that I have right now, and this is very selfish and really personal.
Oh, good.
I feel like as I step into, okay, I know that I have privilege and I have a platform like the podcast, and I want to highlight things that are very connected to yoga. Like when Black Lives Matter happened, yoga teachers were all on board to dive in and really take a look at things. We were at the podcast as well. And I feel like I've been working that muscle of speaking out. And I also see that sometimes speaking out can be viewed as, look at you, you're kind of angry about this. Or is this really the way that a yoga teacher acts
Hmm.
when we start to speak out? Do you have any thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you do that. I feel like, I mean, I've known you for a while, and I kind of feel like I've seen that. Like you're just so brave now, and you share about all kinds of stuff, and I really appreciate it. I just feel like you're exactly doing what you just said. You're using your platform and your privilege to speak about, issues that maybe you don't have to address. Like it would be easier to not, you know, and I'll just say it's a totally personal choice. Like I think there's no right way to do these things. I think the thing about yoga is that the place the yoga practice comes in is that you reflect on yourself, self-study, and well, maybe more than that. I think the yoga practice gives us that power, like internal power and strength, right? Like an ability to feel more connected with ourselves and more at ease in our lives. And that's important. So there's that first step of going inward. And then I think the second step is then what do you do with that? What do you do with what you find and the energy and the power that you have? And I think especially if you have privilege, like for me, even though I'm a gay man, I'm still a white man, and so I have a lot of privilege. I'm really close to power in many opportunities in my life, and I feel like I then have a responsibility. And this is my personal feeling. I have a responsibility to then use that access to bring other people in and to give other people access as much as I can. And I think being queer has helped me in a way see that. I think it's given me a realization that, because in some ways I don't have access. I think as a gay person, I think I've had many challenges in my life, but I've also had a lot of access. So it's like, I think I've seen through my self-study, I begin to see, this is something I can really do. I can use the power and privilege I have to offer some benefit to others. And to be honest, it's not about benefit, it's about creating equity. Because I feel like there's a trap in what I'm saying, and I just want to identify that right away, in white saviorism, which is to think that I will also be able to fix everything. And that is not the answer. What I'm saying is I need to create space to share resources and all kinds of opportunities with other marginalized folks. And that's the benefit I can give. So the way I share power is not by speaking for other people, but actually giving them access to platforms, to opportunities to make money, really basic things. So I'm not really answering your question, but I just want to say that's like the way in for me. And I just want to say that, and that my book isn't directing people to go perform social justice or do something. The book for me is about how yoga is doing the internal work that allows you to make positive change in the world, and however that may appear for you. And it could be that positive change is an internal thing about the way you feel about yourself. It could be the way you deal with your kids. If you're a marginalized identity, it might be just self-care. But if you have privilege, it might be in considering the ways you use that in the world. So that's all I guess I wanted to say to you is I think you're doing it because you are thinking about it. You've reflected on your position, you know what I mean? And you're being honest about that with yourself, and then trying to use that position to support others. Does that feel like enough of an answer? I don't know.
Yeah. And I feel like reading your book gave me it was soothing in many ways. Like there was something. Okay, so there's so many notes. First of all, I want to call it that Jessica says here, the ultimate goal of yoga for me is connection, and then goes on to clarify, when I say connection, it's both with myself and like body, mind, breath, and with others, family, community. And so I think that's really, we have that. It's like we're working on ourselves, and you said something in your book. The more you can process your own issues, the more effective you can be in the world. And I love this. I love this so much of let's deal with our own inner stuff.
Yeah. Well, think about it. It's like, I always think about that thing that doctors, that oath, actually, it's not in the Hippocratic Oath, but part of what Hippocrates said was first do no harm. Or something. There's like that idea, right? That first, before you go to help someone and to be of use or service in the world, before you do that, really fix yourself, heal yourself, because that is the best service you can actually provide. You could actually prevent future mistakes and causing more harm by being reflective, by being conscious of your limitations, by caring for yourself. And I don't think we spend time doing that. And that's what I love about yoga, right? It's this internal personal practice. We spend time really working on ourselves. Because I think if everyone did that, if everyone in the world really took care of themselves and had the capacity to, had the time and resources to do that, there would be no harm caused. You know what I mean? We wouldn't be hurting each other. So I think for those people who have the capacity to do practice, have the time and the resources to do their spiritual practice and their yoga, make sure that you get clear on how can I be in the world at least neutral, if not offer some benefit. You know what I mean? At least do no harm, if that makes sense.
Yes, it completely does.
Okay.
Karina says the patience thing with my kids is definitely one of the biggest reasons I feel a need to practice every day. But outside of myself, I also think it's about building community.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. It's so true with my kids. That's what I saw. I saw that when I was centered and when I had practice, I didn't make it about me. It's like I could actually be present for what was happening with them. And I messed up as a parent. I'm not saying I was that good at it, but I'm just saying I realized my practice was directly related to the way I show up in the world and the way I could serve the people I love and care for them it made me more available to them. And then also for my community. I think that's exactly right. I think this is the tension I see, is that I think the tradition of yoga is mostly of a inward focus. If you think about the monastic tradition, that's most prevalent within the yoga teachings. And that's not the only tradition. There's a lot of other more engaged householder yoga as well, and activist yoga in the history of yoga. But there is this kind of monastic tradition that takes over that you read about, which is like this idea that as a yogi, or your goal is enlightenment on a personal level, and that you should go and sit in a cave and meditate for years and years. Like, in a way, that's like this weird idea we have. And I think our Western practices are kind of built on that idea of personal growth only and self-care. And that's important. Like I said, there's a really essential role for that for all of us, and especially for people who have a marginalized identity or a lack of resources in their life. If you have a disability, for example, like I think, like I had a student who had a pretty severe disability, and she was saying, I wish I could offer more in the world. And I was like, well, look at what you're doing. Caring for your body is an amazing service. And she was really caring for herself with her practice. And I just think that's something you can offer. You can even think about people and send them like positive thoughts. Like that's a really powerful service. Anyway, but I feel like those of us that have access to resources and we have energy and we want to be of use in the world, really look at how our practice impacts the choices we make and how we show up in the world, rather than just how is yoga going to make me enlightened, right? How am I going to be in the world instead, I think is really the question we should be asking ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. This is also, I want to touch in on a story that you shared in your book, and I was like, oh, this really jumped out at me. You shared a story about your teacher and the connection that you had with your teacher. And then it came to a time where your teacher was being called out for abuse, and you didn't want to see that at that time. You shared in your book. And some people were telling you at that time, this person is just, these people speaking out, these women speaking out about the sexual abuse are just projecting their issues over onto this teacher. Can you tell us about that? And here's one of the ways of, we see our teacher that we've really studied, we've learned from them. The whole goal is like ahimsa is one of the big limbs. Yeah, talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, my teacher is Swami Satchidananda, and there are women who say that he abused them. And when I was first getting involved, I'd heard that, but I was, like you said, I was told it wasn't true. And I believed that. I believed it wasn't true. And then later I was like, wait, believe women, like believe the stories that are being told. And I feel terrible that I didn't at the time. And now I realize that, like many people, we're part of lineages where there has been abuse. I would say every major lineage in yoga. I actually posted about this on Instagram today, actually myself. And every major lineage has had some kind of abuse within the yoga tradition. And, how do you reconcile the fact that you might, like personally for me, how I learned so much and I got so much from that tradition. I mean, in yoga itself came through my teacher, and I'm so grateful for that. And yet I don't want to support that abuse or him. And I feel like it's just such a challenge to find that balance. And again, it's like most things in life, it's some kind of a weird paradox, like there's no right answer. But I think we have to be honest and straightforward about the abuse that has happened and try to find other ways forward. And what I write about in the book and what I posted today about was about community learning. And, my friend Theo Waldcraft has a great book called Post-Lineage Yoga, where she talks about community learning and how that's what's happening in a lot of yoga communities now, that we're kind of mentoring each other, and we're supporting each other. And I feel like you do that with me, Shannon. Like, I feel like the relationship we have is like peer mentoring, where we both run like big Facebook groups and we help each other like address difficult challenges. And I think that kind of peer learning in community learning, like with my students, like when I used to teach in-person classes for years and years and years, like the kind of community that was built up there and the way we all learned from each other was profound. There was no guru there. I was in the role of teacher, but my students were equals. Like there was like it was a equal playing field. You know what I mean? Like we all were learning from each other, and I think that is the goal. And then other teachers I know who are peers, like I love to learn from them. I think we need to look at that hierarchy that we create, not only within like these guru traditions, but even within a yoga class. You know, like how do we relate to people, and how can we see everyone as our teacher, and learn how to not give our power away to people, even as we're learning important things. You know what I'm saying? Like, how is it that I could learn from you and love you and thank you and still not let you abuse me?
I think the other thing that I want to call attention to is that I could also leave you one of those voice messages, and at any moment you might say to me, hold on one second, Shannon, have you thought of this perspective? Like, just wait one moment. I hear it. Like, I get these messages from you. What I appreciate is friendships where people are okay to say, this isn't really fitting. You know, when you start to be in those, I've been in yoga communities where that wasn't allowed. You weren't allowed to question the head teacher, whatever we want to call them.
Yeah. I think it's human nature. It feels like we replicate those, those really unhealthy relationships all over the place. And we do it within yoga, we do it within the corporate world, and in other settings. You know, there's abuse everywhere. I think the issue here for me is the power of spiritual teachings, which maybe offer the teacher a little more control of the student. And I think that's why this is such a big issue in yoga, and maybe bigger than in some other areas of the world, in that there's so much power in the yoga teachings that it can be easily misused. And what I see in particular is that students are transformed, and people, I mean, what I've seen for myself, let's say this, I've had students who were transformed by yoga, and they see me as the teacher as somehow doing that to them. And that's the first mistake. You know, it's like, sure, my ego would love that, would love to think that I've fixed you or healed you in some way, or like solved some problem you have, but it's just not true. And all I have done is basically maybe repeat what my teacher told me, and shared with you some ancient ideas in the way that I understand them. And like, yay for me, like, I'm glad I can do that. And I'm glad you're going to like pay me to do that. And that's that payment, whatever you pay me, like $10 or $20 to take that class, that's the energy exchange we have. And actually then we're fine. Like, we're even now. What you've done in covering this realization for yourself, and that internal healing you've done, is on you. And it's your own thing to hold, like, and to have, and to be responsible for. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's where we get stuck, because it's like so much power and beauty in these teachings, and the teacher wants to take responsibility for that often, or their ego does.
Yep. And I've been in the position as a student thinking, oh, I want to put that person in that place. Like, I want to, there's some famous yoga teacher, or just someone I've learned so much from. I've also wanted to put them in that spot. So I love this. Can you talk about for a moment, I love this title in your book, just popped out, My Liberation is Tied to Yours. I love this. I don't know that I really understood it when I first started learning about social justice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about like how this is possible?
There's so many ways of that. I mean, I think that's a great question. And I don't even know where to go with it, because it's like, within social justice, that's true. And within yoga, that's true. You know, I think if we just look at the yoga side for a minute, I mean, we were talking before about ego, and I think there's some really interesting research happening in mindfulness right now. about some of the downsides to mindfulness and some of the problems that are occurring. And because you can think of mindfulness as kind of like the westernized Buddhist practice that's kind of everywhere. Like, mindfulness is like everywhere, even in corporate America. And there was a research project done at the University of Buffalo, and I can't remember exactly the name of the researcher, but they looked at whether mindfulness actually increased self-centeredness in people. And it did. Basically, it did increase self-centeredness in people who were already self-centered. So if you tended to be someone who was self-centered, or I would say like egotistical, it actually increased that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I wasn't surprised by that. And there was actually some other research in Europe that was similar a few years back that showed a similar thing. I think that, to me, what's happening is like mindfulness, and also I would say yoga practices, build your prana and your energy, and they're going to build whatever, they're going to support kind of whatever's in your mind. So if you tend towards self-centeredness, or you have a strong ego, I think the practices will build that up. But if you're a giving, loving person, I think that can build that up. And I think all of us need to do some, reflection as to what is our nature, like what do I tend towards, and to look at the practices we're doing and to see if what we're doing is actually just kind of exaggerating our individual, way already of being in the world, or is it actually giving us a balance? So that's just my experience, that I've had to find practices that help me. Like, I'm a very shy person, actually. I know it's hard to believe maybe now because I like to talk so much, but like public speaking was like my biggest fear ever. Literally, like I don't think I spoke in school ever. Like I'm just silent, sitting back and hiding.
Wow. I have a hard time believing that.
I know. And yoga gave me a lot of power and strength to like realize, what, I have something to say and I want to share it because I love the teaching so much. And I have a lot of other things I care about. I care about other people. It hurts me when I see suffering in the world. If it's like a person who's suffering or an animal, like I want to do something to support them. And I realized, so I'm saying two things. One is that I tried to find a practice that gave me strength because that's what I needed. And also, I think my initial desire to reduce suffering and harm is really at the heart of the teachings. Like I really do think the yoga is about reducing suffering, but at the same time, it's about connecting with the ultimate truth of who we are, which is not just individuals. The fact is yoga is spiritual teaching, and it's about transcending the idea that I'm an individual only in this body and mind. This body and mind are changing and it's going to die, but my spirit is going to live on. And that's the truth of who I am. And yoga is about that realization of my spiritual truth and my spiritual nature, which is the same in you and everyone else. And yet your lived experience, your body and mind, is completely different than me. And so in yoga, there's this duality, you could say, of the same and different at the same time. And I think that's also seen in social justice. In social justice, we see that we need to acknowledge our differences. And I need to say, like, I'm a middle-aged gay white man, Jewish man. I live in Chumash land here, which is called Santa Barbara, California. I have access to a lot of things. I also have a lot of challenges in my life. My experience is very different than yours and to probably everyone else listening. But in my heart, we are exactly the same. I know there's a piece of me, like that my essence is the same as yours. And so how do I live that truth, acknowledging the difference and separation, and yet see that we're the same? And so if you're suffering because of you've been abused or because of racism or whatever, that I have the capacity to transcend my individuality for a moment to feel our connection and our unity. And what my teacher's teacher, Swami Shivananda, that was one of his famous mottos. He said, find the unity in diversity. And I think that's really a beautiful summary of what I'm trying to describe, like finding the unity in the diversity of life, and actually allow it to give you the motivation to serve. I don't know if I'm getting, if I could go on about service.
It's so good. It's so good.
Shannon.
I want to pause there for a moment, because when you also, from your book, one thing that was really challenging me was looking at, okay, so if we're all connected, that means I also need to, I'm even like choking up on it, need to work on my connection to people who I really disagree with as well. Like the people around that I see around being called out for harm, certain politicians that I really don't connect with. Like I'm thinking of many people in the world where I'm like, I don't want you to be in my club, but you're saying, and you say it in your book, and it was good for me, like our liberation is tied together. Like the abused person and the abuser both need liberation, like both are suffering.
I mean, this is like, I quote Thich Nhat Hanh a lot, because he really, to me, he personifies this approach, which is that he created what's called engaged Buddhism, which is like saying, these are spiritual teachings for your inner life, but the way you act in the world needs to be a reflection of them. And that's about speaking up for those who've been harmed and seeing yourself in others. And he's powerful in that way. I mean, just mind-boggling, his ability to have compassion for people who have really caused him harm personally and others. I'm not saying you need to be Thich Nhat Hanh or to be the Buddha. Like I think that's like, maybe that's the goal for all of us, but I'm not there. And I mean, I imagine we're not there, and that's okay. But I think just to realize that, I mean, it's nice to say it. I think it's true that even someone that's an abuser is still human. Someone who's committed a crime is still human. People in prison, even if they've committed crimes, they deserve to be respected. They don't need to be abused. They deserve to have their human rights, just like anyone else. And that's true of the abusers in yoga as well. They have human rights, and I respect that, but they also need to have consequences for their actions. And I'm not trying to be a judge. All I'm saying is that we are all intimately connected, and that's the point of yoga, actually, is to find those connections. And I think what I focus on always is going back to compassion and service. It's like, because this is the thing about service, I just want to say, it's like, to me, service is exactly what I'm describing in action. So like service is where you actually use your energy, your actions, to take yoga off the mat into your life. And service isn't about getting something for yourself. It's about acting in a way that it's acting out of love for others. So it's love in action. So when I'm acting in service, I'm caring for someone or something, or myself, or my essential self. And it's the hardest thing in yoga. To me, service is the hardest practice that we have, karma yoga, for sure, because our ego always wants to come in. And so I guess I'll just say this is not easy. And I'm talking about something that I think is more just like on a very, I don't know, to me, it's like on a high level, like I'd like to have these concepts in my mind, but like on a day-to-day practical way, I think we can implement these practices by taking care of ourselves and taking care of those around us and speaking up when we see harm occurring. You don't have to be an activist. You don't have to go and like march on the streets or, I don't know, petition someone, or, I mean, you can do those things. You don't have to. You can serve, you can do service in the moment. And I see people doing it all the time. I mean, I have to say, like, most people live in that way. They're actually so kind and caring. Like, I'm always blown away by, I don't know, like when I go to a restaurant and like a server is actually really interested and kind. I'm like, what kind of patience does that take? You know what I mean? To like work at a restaurant and then like be able to actually care about people. I mean, that takes a lot of compassion, or to be like a nurse and really like care for someone who's physically struggling. I know the few times I've been in the hospital, I've always been blown away by like the care that I've been lucky enough to get. And I just think it happens all day. You know, most people are doing this without thinking. And all I'm saying is that the yoga practices support that,
Right.
in my mind.
I love how you brought in Buddhism to this. Sean is a Buddhist, and we were talking about this today, specifically around, like you said, that your teacher was called out for abuse, and this has happened. My teacher as well. I studied the Kundalini tradition, and Sean was saying, like, the Buddhist organization is putting things in place where there's accountability there as well, where it's like, when you see this harm, you know, so we're finding ways to care for people in this way as well. And I love how you said, like, we're aiming to be there, like Thich Nhat Hanh or Buddha, and we're just not there yet. And I also want to call out that sometimes it's really messy when we start to do this. Like I sometimes fumble over my word. I often fumble over my words and do this imperfectly, and I think that's okay.
You mean you're human?
Yeah. I'm human.
Well, I talk about that in the book, actually.
Yeah.
If I could just interrupt for a second. I mean, I talk about failure as a practice, because that's what I just thank you for mentioning that. I think that's exactly what we do. We set up this ideal like goal, and then we like can't reach it, and we think, oh, we're failures, and we kind of give up, or we're just like use it as an excuse to criticize. And I do that to myself. Like, I'm very self-critical, and I think I'm really working on that. I like to focus on something that I share a lot when I teach, which is to really analyze my internal voice and to start to see, like, so this is what I often ask people, my students, is like, do you talk to yourself? I'm asking you now. Like, do you talk to yourself in your mind?
Yes, there's definitely an internal dialogue going on. Yep.
Okay, so my question is, who's listening to that dialogue?
Just
like,
me. Unless I start, unless it just starts coming out. You probably do in your message, in my messages to you.
That's true, but no, what I mean is, okay, so in your mind, you're talking.
Yeah.
So someone's talking and someone's listening or something. Is that right? Like, part of you is talking. Do you know what I'm asking you? Do you know what I'm saying?
Sort of. I think I do.
So it's like, my question is, what is the part of you that's listening? And I'll just tell you what I think. I mean, if I don't want to put you on the spot, because I don't want to challenge you too much, but I mean, it's like, to me, it's like the mind is talking, right? Like, and in yoga, we do, you know, if you look at yoga philosophy, it's all about working with the mind. You know, I know we talk a lot about asana, but if you look at the teachings, really, asana is about preparing to work on the mind, right? To look at how the mind is functioning ethically and in terms of its ability to concentrate and to be in the moment. That's what, you know, all that practice is for, right? Look, this relationship with the mind and understanding not how we can control the mind, but how we can work with the mind, how our heart, our true self, can actually have a relationship with the mind that's productive and can give us the life that we really want, to feel joy and peace in our lives, because our head and our heart are aligned and working together. And that's all I'm trying to say about this internal dialogue. So what I'm saying is that, for me at least, my mind is talking, and then I would say it's my heart, or you could call it spirit or God, or whatever word you like to use, Atman, Purusha, or Brahman, or Sanskrit words for that's what's listening, right? Like, my heart is listening to my head. And I would say, to me, the practice of yoga are about making it so that the listening, there's not an argument going on in there all the time. It's not like there's not a lot of internal struggle there. And the more that I can like heal that relationship within me, the more productive I could be. And I can't remember why I was bringing this up. What were we talking about? Wait, no, I'm forgetting.
I don't know, but I'm just fascinated for a moment there. Let me just ask you. Oh, my alarm's going off because it's time to pick my daughter up from school. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
I had shut that. No, Sean's picking her up today. This is what you get for the live interview. I'm just fascinated now when you were talking about the mind. And I was thinking, oh, is the goal then to sometimes get the mind to just listen to the heart for a minute?
Yeah,
That's
that's
what I
called
was
meditation.
thinking. I love it. I want to call out some people who have shared some thoughts here. Karina says students of yoga quite often go through transformation, but that also puts them in a vulnerable position. You talked about this, Jivana. Hence,
Yeah.
why the role of teacher is a very responsible position to be careful not to overstep. You
Yeah.
talk about this a lot in your accessible yoga training, and I hear
Yeah.
Amber Carnes talking about it a lot.
Actually,
Um,
the person I think who talks about it right now most clear for me is M. Camellia or Melanie Camellia. They really talk so much about power in that relationship, and the word they use is agency. Like that, our job is to really give our students agency over themselves, not only over their body physically in terms of the choices they make in an asana practice, but over their lives and the choices they're making. I love what Karina said. I think that's exactly right. And not just overstep. I think we need to learn how to, like I said, readjust the hierarchy that often exists in the student-teacher relationship and actually come up with more of a equal relationship where the student has equal power as the teacher and equal responsibility. So we often talk about like what's the teacher's role or responsibility in a class. I think we need to start training yoga students regarding what is their job. Like what is your job as a yoga student? And to realize like you have a lot of choices to make, you have a lot of power, and to own that and to not just give it up to the teacher. And that what you're discovering through this practice isn't just being given to you by the teacher, but it's something you're uncovering within yourself. I mean, yoga is a process of self-discovery. Or like another friend of mine, Rachel Knowles, talks about. I used to use the word empowerment a lot. You know, yoga is an empowering practice, and she once corrected me and said it's about sharing power. And I like that. It's just like about this like sharing relationships. I like this idea of equal playing field, and I know that I have a lot of authority. I have a like you, like I have a position of authority and power and privilege. And therefore, it's even more important for me to be conscious of this and be thoughtful about the ways that I'm abusing that power, which is just natural. That's what my ego does.
yep.
It's natural that I want to defend myself, that I want to protect myself, and that's fine. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Going back to failure, I was just trying to talk about failure for a moment there,
Yes.
Shannon. Can I just, because I was
Yes.
talking about that internal dialogue, and the reason I was saying that is that what I have found for myself is that when I mess up, I'm really hard on myself. Like when I make mistake, I'll like swear at myself or say like, "Oh, you're so stupid," or I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I have like I'm very critical, and I'm just starting to see that is not helpful, and that actually I'm trying to embrace the failure, and I talk about in the book that failure is a practice for me, and that every time. Like I tried to bring it down to asana. Like every time I do an asana, I fail. And that's the point. Do you know what I mean? The point is to actually see where I'm challenged, to like go to the edge and not hurt myself, but just like to see, oh yeah, that's what I'm still working with. And that's okay. You know what I mean? Like you exercise until you're done. Like you don't exercise until you like collapse. You exercise until, oh yeah, I can't do anymore. That's that edge of failure. And that's actually a good place to see. So I think there's benefit in that, in embracing the failure and realizing that's how we learn and grow, rather than using it as a way to erode our own self-confidence and actually make it so what we do is we use perfectionism as a way of stopping ourselves from really doing anything.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. How many times have yoga teachers who are listening been like, I should do this thing. I should share this thing. Oh, I am not going to look good in that video. I'm not going to do
Yeah.
this. Yeah, that can really hold us back. I love this thought of failure, and I don't think it's taught enough in schools to our kids.
Yeah.
Like, if they could be taught that failure and mistakes are really good things to be celebrated, I don't know many of my teachers that were teaching me that. And I think that's a good thing. Someone is saying here, hi, this is such a different yet amazing experience to join the conversation live. I'm so glad that you're here. Let us know if you have questions. And someone else is just saying, my liberation is tied to yours. I love it. I agree. Tatum, thank you so much for being here. Tatum is saying, yes, agree. My wish for the leaders who harm is self-reflection, accountability, and growth. But the harm does not have to lead those who have harmed them through that if it doesn't feel safe. Do you want to talk about that, Jivana? How can our leaders build in this reflection, accountability, and growth?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tatum is actually doing it, even though she's saying you don't have to. I think Tatum's an example of someone who's actually really been courageous and spoken up when they don't really need to. You know, and so I appreciate that. But so you're asking me, how can teachers do it themselves?
How can we build this in that our leaders?
Yeah. To me, it's like, oh, how about practicing yoga?
Oh.
I mean, honestly, like, it's like so simple. I don't even know how to say, like, if you look at the teachings, they couldn't be more clear. You know, like, I don't know, ethical practices, ahimsa, non-harm. It, like I talked before around egoism, realizing that egoism is one of the kleshas. That's one of the obstacles to our personal enlightenment and self-realization. And the more I defend and protect myself, and I'm unwilling to see the harm I cause, the more ignorant I become, and the less ability I'll have to be enlightened, whatever, you know, to be in my true self. And I'm not saying I don't personally, by the way. Like, I totally am. I'm egotistical and I defend myself because it's fine. I'm not perfect. And I'm embracing that too. Like, again, I feel like that's a theme in this conversation, was about like perfectionism. And I often see that in students where, like, a student will be like, I want to be over here. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be like this. And then it's like, well, actually, you know, if you practice yoga, you maybe move towards that place, or maybe realize that that thing you wanted over there isn't really great. You can just be right here where you are. Does that make sense? So it's like, healing to me isn't about getting somewhere else. Enlightenment to me is not about becoming someone else. It's actually about embracing the fullness of yourself, not in a defensive way, but in a more honest way.
I feel like I read this. I've just read this in your book.
Maybe.
I mean, it makes sense. It was something like, I forget. I was making so many notes. I have so many notes here that I can't even read them all. But I remember there was this short meditation that you put in there about really embracing all of ourselves. I want to say as well, Tatum, thank you so much for being here. And thank you for stepping up and speaking up and calling out harm in the yoga world recently. Jivana, I have a question about this as well, because I see over and over again people who speak out and speak up like Tatum has. There's no reason to speak out like that except for bravery and wanting to stop harm for other people. There's no benefit that Tatum gets for speaking up.
Yeah.
And I'm so curious as to why there'd be any pushback of like, I'm not sure I believe this. I need more information. I'm going to stick up for someone who, like you said, that you saw it in yourself. I've seen it in myself of, why do we do that? Why are we not just believing someone when they step forward and say, I've been harmed?
Mm-hmm.
And what can we do better in the yoga world? I'm stuck on this week.
I know. Me too. I mean, there's a lot. I think there's a lot of reasons for this. I think if we go back again to what we're talking about around egoism, I just think that we've all built like these kind of very delicate shells of ego that we're protecting, and it's upsetting when someone says something that erodes our self-image. And so, like, my self-image might be like, as a student of this famous teacher, that's part of how I perceive myself, and my self-worth is based in many ways. It could be on being a student of this famous teacher, like my teacher, Swami Satchidananda. I was very much identified as a student of his. That's how I saw myself. And so part of why I wouldn't allow myself to accept the abuse is that it didn't fit in with my personal self-image. So like it would demand that I reevaluate myself, because I had basically given my allegiance to someone who had done harm. Which is why I think we see, it's like what we see in political problems, basically, like in politics, the same way, where like we defend a politician and like we believe in them and support them, and we're seen as a follower of that politician. And then when something comes out that they've done some harm, we either deny that it exists at all, or it will erode our self-image, and we think there's something wrong with me if I follow someone who's not perfect, I've followed someone who's done harm, then what's wrong with me? And so I think, unfortunately, the people that speak the truth, like Tatum's done, or speak out about their truth, I mean, it doesn't even matter. If that was her truth, like that's all that matters. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter like that we have to prove it. It's like when anyone speaks their truth and it's not aligned with your thinking, rather than go on the attack, really use yoga to reflect on, why are you so fragile? Like what have you had to build? And I'll just say that again, that's what yoga is for. Like yoga is literally about seeing clearly the structures you built in your mind for your ego and all of the things that you've identified with, all the attachments that you have, which is a good word to use, I think, in yoga teachings, that support an ego that is actually not real. The whole point of yoga is to see through that veil, right? That veil is literally made up of ideas of who you are that are based on culture, things that you've been taught from outside yourself, from society, from your family or whatever. And yoga is about identifying with something else other than that basic, that veil itself. We're going to identify with the light inside instead. And that's not, it's very hard to do. And I'm not saying like we all need to be enlightened. I'm just saying at least do the practice, at least pretend, we can at least pretend to do it by like realizing that we don't have to be on the defensive. The minute you're being defensive, you're not practicing yoga.
Oh yeah, that's another thing that I wrote down. It was something about being right. Oh my gosh, where is it? I'll find it. Maybe I didn't write it down. Maybe I was like, maybe I want to. I don't know. I can't find it here in my notes, Jivana. But I want to point out Jessica saying, I'm loving this conversation. It's so timely and relevant. Thank you, Shannon and Jivana, for sharing your thoughts and wisdom. Tatum, I also want to invite you, if you want to post in the comments here your open letter that you shared. I'm happy to give people some indication of what we were talking about in your bravery of talking out. Someone else is coming here. Hi from Jerusalem, Israel. That's exciting. What time is it there? Also, I love this, and both of you two are talking about such serious and important topics today, and you're both keeping it light and making me and yourselves laugh. So beautiful.
Yeah, I know. Life is too short. You know what I mean? It's like life's too short. If I can't laugh about it, then it is really, it's just creating more suffering. So I don't mean to make light of someone else's suffering. I hope I haven't done that, but I do think that I have to be able to just work on this all the time. We have to keep it light and slightly, I don't know what the word is. Open. I just have to feel open. Yeah.
For me, comedy and laughter really helps to release the tension. And that's what good comedians do. I've like listened to comedy podcasts where they build the tension and you feel it, and then boom, then they drop the joke and it.
I know. I think I really should have been a stand-up comedian. Like, I think I missed my calling.
There's still time. There's still time.
There's still time.
I'm sure you have tons of material from the yoga world that you could also use.
It's true. Yeah. True.
I also want to ask you about the rainbow mind. Tell us, in your book, there's a whole chapter to the rainbow mind. And I know you told me, go look at that chapter, and it was so good. I made most of my notes from there. Tell us about the rainbow mind.
I mean, rainbow mind, what I'm trying to say is that what I've shared already, that I think the yoga teachings are very clear about embracing the diversity through seeing the connection. And I feel like that's a certain I called it rainbow mind, because I feel like what I've been trained in, sometimes in a traditional yoga fashion, is to quiet my mind and still my mind and control my mind. And I feel like these are very kind of patriarchal and a little bit conservative concepts that I'm pushing against. Like, I actually think, like I mentioned earlier, embracing failure, embracing the fact that my mind is very active. Like, my mind is very busy, and that's fine. Like, it's beautiful. It's not bad. And I find, like, in meditation, I can either fight my mind and kind of just berate myself for being bad all the time, or I could actually become more at peace with my own, like, I don't know what, like my own busyness and creativity and fun, like you said. And I feel like rainbow mind is that to me. It's just like maybe approaching ourselves a little differently. And especially, I also bring in the rainbow because as a queer person, I'm really convinced that queerness is like a superpower. I honestly, like, I feel like queer people tend to have like a whole different way of seeing the world, and are often at the forefront of art and other inventions and things. And like, I guess I just want to like say that, like, I feel like queerness is a gift, and I embrace that part of myself and my mind. And so to me, it's like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I want my practice to be supportive of who I am and in the way I perceive the world, while still being respectful to the tradition. And like the whole title of the book, by the way, like Yoga Revolution, I'm not trying to say that yoga needs to be revolutionized. I'm saying yoga is a revolution. Like, these are transformative practices that have revolutionized me in my life, like internally and externally. And I feel like we need to start seeing them that way again, but in a contemporary context where we can focus our energy on loving ourselves and each other. How does that work? Does that make sense?
It does. It does. It's so
Thanks,
good.
Hannah.
Jivana, you and I talked about like how much time do we have, and already it's been an hour, and I
Oh,
think
shoot.
I could talk to you all day on this, all day. Someone's up at 10 o'clock at night here. Thank
Oh,
you
maybe
for
from
being here from
Israel.
Israel. There are so many things in your book, so I just want to highlight, like, you talk about building that your personal practice. There's a section at the back of the book that's about that. Um, I
Yeah.
I feel like there were so many things in this week where I was like, "Oh, this is really soothing for me to see."
Uh-huh.
You even talked about what it feels like to get stuck in this place of like anger, frustration, and then just defeat. Like, how can I even make a difference with all that's happening in the world right now? What would you say when we're feeling like, "Oh, I'm doing my personal practice, I'm
Uh-huh.
doing my best, and the world is overwhelming right now." Is there anything that
Yeah.
you would share with us?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I'll just say, like, to me, the book, to go back to that structure, like that it's three parts. And like, to me, the first part is to look at the yoga teachings and to and kind of analyze the teachings and see how they fit for me right now. And the second part is then how do you act them? How do you act yoga in the world? How do you bring yoga out in your life and in your, just rather than in your class, how do you live these teachings? And then the last part again is building a personal practice. And that's why I did it that way, because to be honest, that's what it does. For me, it just goes back to that. It's just constantly going in and out, like inside and then back outside into the world. Sometimes I think in the book, I use this image of waves on the beach. And I love that image. It helps me. I think of a wave and how a wave crashes on the shore. Like it's like us reaching out into the world. Like we're so busy all day, like doing and whatever we're doing out there. And then the wave like recedes back into the ocean. And to me, that's my practice. Connecting with myself. And then it crashes again on the shore, like making a lot of mistakes. and then back into the ocean. And I feel like that's what, like, I don't think there is an answer to your question. I think like the world is chaotic, and I think it's always been like that. I don't think it's getting worse. I think that's just human nature. The world is like, if we look at the world as our combined human experience, it is literally just like all of our egos together, like working together. You know what I mean? Like that's what we have. But you could also see the world in the same way that we see ourselves. Rather than fighting that, you can embrace that chaos and maybe find a way to feel at peace with the fact that there will always be suffering in the world. Like that's not, you can't stop it. There will always be death. Like literally, as we're talking, people are dying like right now. And I don't just mean like COVID. I'm just saying like that's like the human cycle, right? It's just like the nature of reality. Like people are constantly dying and being born. Like during our hour conversation, I wonder how many people have died and been born around the world during this hour. It's like mind-boggling to think of. I think sometimes we just pick something to get upset about, and that's fine. Like it's okay to be upset. But if you really want to go there, just like think about all of it and the pure utter chaos that's happening right now around the world. And it just kind of makes me stop and realize, you know what, that's not my responsibility. Like my responsibility is to focus on myself and the immediate circle of people around me, especially the people close to me, especially my family and my intimate relationships, and to look at, you know, how can I cause less harm there? How can I be more loving to my husband, to my kids, to myself, to my community? How can I support more? That's where my work is. You know, I don't need to worry about all that, right? Unless I'm president of the United States, I guess, then I could worry, but like, I'm not.
That's who I'm voting for. I can't as a Canadian.
Shannon Crowe for president of Canada.
It's prime minister.
Prime minister. You'd be amazing.
Okay, you just said support. And that is something that I got at the Accessible Yoga Conference from you. And this is something that you do at every conference that I know of, is you ask, how can you support other people? And I'd love to ask our connected yoga teachers, how can you support someone in your life right now? Maybe that's someone you see online. Maybe it's, someone in your community who's struggling. Jivana, how did you come up with this support question, and how do you word it? Do you want to?
Yeah, so the conference started because it's a long story. I won't tell the whole story, but basically I needed support. And at that time in my life, I had just moved actually, and I didn't have any work. I didn't have a yoga community here in Southern California. And I realized, it just dawned on me that a lot of yoga teachers feel that way. That's why I think you and I bond so much, because I think we both feel like, you know, we're trying to build community and something we want. Like we're building the thing we want in the world. And that's what happened. The conference came out of that desire for me, for a community of supportive, like-minded teachers who are into bringing yoga to people that don't have access. And so Accessible Yoga Conference started just to like support each other, like peer networking and supporting. And then at the first conference, I was like, the first thing I said to people who had gathered was like, let's use this time to do that. Like, how can we work outside of the corporate structure that's infiltrated yoga, or, you know what I mean? Like the way that yoga is being like an industry, and actually do grassroots networking and support, which is how activism works. By the way, when I call myself an AIDS activist, really what I was is like a community organizer. I mean, that's pretty much what I've been doing my whole life. Community organizing is really my passion. And I would say that's what I'm doing still. And the conference is community organizing, just like you are. I think you're exactly the same, that you're a community organizer. And anyway, the way we do that is through each of us individually doing one thing to support another teacher. So like at the conference, we had a few, 100 people there. And I was like, if each of you finds one other person at this event, and that was their assignment, I called it Jivana's homework, and they would go and find somebody who supported in some way. And I said, these are the things you can do. You can share about their work with someone else, like say, hey, do you know this person? Like network for them, or share about them on social media, or actually give them a job like hire them or find someone to get them a job, or collaborate with them on something. Like, let's do this workshop together, or, you know, and I have to say, out of that, like, whole organizations, I think, have come, honestly. Like, it's been remarkable. And I still feel like that's the heart of what accessible yoga is trying to support each other. And then it does, you know, ripple out.
I love this so much. I hope that our connected yoga teachers take that as their homework. Jivana's giving you your homework, so
Yes.
now you can make it happen and tell us. Give us an update in the comments. Thank you so much for your time today, Jivana. I can't wait for the conference in October, and everyone who's commented on YouTube, and if you haven't, go do that. Then you get entered in the draw we're drawing. 2 people are going to win tickets to the Accessible Yoga Conference in October. The dates are
October 14th through 17th.
Thank you.
And also it's online, and there'll be access for a year, because there's 50 presentations. Well, there's not 50. There's 50 presenters, lots of presentations, too much to take in one weekend. So you'll have access to all the recordings for a year, or you can attend the free pre-conference intensive on the 14th. Yeah, I hope people will come. Will comment, and so they get access to those 2 free tickets, or just go sign up on our website at accessibleyoga.org. I'd love for people to come. And also, I want to thank you for, you know, sharing about my book, and it's not out yet, if people are wondering. So you can't get it. Shannon,
only it's like a personal book.
I had the publisher send you an advanced review copy because I wanted you to read it. But
I want to show you my favorite page.
Okay, well, I say pre-orders are available. So anywhere you buy a book, you can pre-order the book, and it comes out in November. What's your favorite page? Oh, and by the way, there's like 15 contributors in there.
That's my favorite page, Jivana.
Oh, really? I can't see what page is that. Oh, is that Big Non? Oh, your name.
I almost started crying when I was reading the book, and I said to Sean, "My name is in this book."
Yeah, I thanked you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you. I do. I really appreciate you. I'm so grateful for what you do. I'm sure your whole community here feels the same way. You're amazing. You're great. What is it? You said something to me in the beginning of this, and I was thinking, yeah, that's Shannon, which is that you're very calm and soothing. And like, even in the midst of chaos, you have just a very relaxed way. And it's just it's so awesome. And I think also that your compassion really comes through. I wish I had asked you more questions. I'll have to come in. I'll have to interview you. You have to come onto my podcast. I do have a podcast also for the book. Where I interview all the contributors. Yeah. Yoga
That's
Revolution
amazing.
Podcast. Yeah.
I'll make sure that we pop a link to that here in the comments. I just saw that you have some new episodes out. I'm excited to go and listen.
Yeah, because in the book, there's contributors. There's like people talking about their work. And so I interview all of them.
So we can order the book when? Because Karina's like...
you can pre-order it now. Like you can go to any book seller and pre-order, which is awesome. I wish people would. It really helps, actually, if you pre-order the book. And then it comes out on November 16th.
Okay, that'd be one way to get your homework done, is if you go and pre-order the book. You'd be supporting Jivana.
That's not what I mean.
That's what I mean.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, that podcast has been great. Jivana's podcast. Thank you. I'm so glad. Oh, yay. Someone's already putting it in there. Thank you for doing the work here.
Thank you.
Rachel says, how do we give and support those in our community without burning ourselves out, especially if we don't have a local yoga teacher support group?
Yeah. I mean, that's the question that I really ask in the book over and over again, is like, how do you find the balance between self-care and service? And I would just say that, to me, self-care is service to yourself, but just to the point where you have energy to give to others. And I think sometimes we think yoga is only self-care, and that people who already have a lot of privilege, because like the concept of self-care was created by like Black women activists in the 60s to care for themselves so they can do their activism. And then it's been co-opted by a lot of kind of people with privilege. And I would just say the true meaning of the idea of self-care is do whatever you need to do to care for yourself so you have enough energy and don't get burned out, because burnout is not good. So the minute you see that happening, find a way to pull back in, to do less, to get support. Maybe stop doing it. Like, we don't have to fix the world. right? It's not about being the savior. That's not the point here, right? Caring for ourselves is the most important way we can actually serve others. So I
I'm
don't know
so
if that's
glad that you
clear.
said this, Jivana. I was getting right to the edge of that, like, brownout, burnout in the last couple of weeks, and I just told and my friends are like, "You need to pull back. You need to stop doing these things. You need to set boundaries." So I made 2 lists: work, personal.
Mm,
These are the things that I'm going to focus on. Nothing else makes this list now.
awesome.
Until
That's
I have
awesome.
more energy.
Yeah. And I think we all need that. We all need to find some things each day that nourish us. And it can be a little thing like going for a walk. Maybe that's not little, but going outside. Nature to me is very powerful. Having a moment, pausing, like having some tea, like whatever that is, doing your practice. But I mean, it can be little things throughout the day that are just essential for not over giving. And especially people that are really very sensitive, I think, and very compassionate. And maybe this is what Rachel is sharing. I think we tend to go to burnout because we want to just fix and care for everybody. But make sure you're part of that. Make sure fixing and caring for yourself is primary.
Yeah, because
If that makes
otherwise
sense.
you can't be there and can't be of service. This is so good. There's such a balance of, like, do your inner practice, then go out and do the work exactly like that wave.
Yeah. Well, like as
Yeah.
a parent, right? Like we should probably stop talking, I realize, but I'm just going to say, Shannon, like when your kids were little, like you remember how sometimes like you couldn't shower, you couldn't go to the bathroom. Like literally, I remember times where I couldn't go to the bathroom because I couldn't leave my kids doing something. I was like, I couldn't leave them unsupervised. And it's like, it's so hard. It is so hard. Parenting, more than anything that I've experienced, has really challenged that part of me of like finding that balance. How do I care for myself and care for you? And mostly my vision was like, keep them alive. Like
Yes.
that was where I set the boundary, just like there. As long as I keep them alive, then I can take care of myself.
I hear you on this. Oh my gosh. Rachel saying, can't wait for the book. Free State of Mind Sup Yoga says, it's true, we do. Your content has helped me develop my yoga career.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
And Rachel saying, wow, that was helpful. Thank you. I agree. This has been so helpful, so soothing. Thank you, Jivana, for touching on some big
Thanks, Shannon.
topics and writing this book, putting the energy in to write this book. I'm so excited for people to be able to read it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I always love talking to you. So I hope you'll send me some voice messages soon.
I will. I will. I'll tell you how things are going in my garden, and you tell me how cold it is in California. All right.
Okay.
For those conversations.
It was freezing last night.
Freezing.
I had
Just
to put on a
clarify for our
jacket.
listeners. It was 50.
It's about 58.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come and visit in the snow. Oh my gosh. This has been fun.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, Jivana.
Thank you, Shannon. All right.